Good morning and welcome to another edition of Legal Access. We're here every Thursday now at 11:30 to answer your questions and regarding any legal issues. Today's topic is real estate, and if you have any questions, give us a call at 843-848-8080. That's 843-848-8080. Again, my name's Ian McGuire with McGuire Law Firm, and we have a super group, a panel of guests to help us answer those questions. On my left, we have Ken Corbett.
Good morning.
Good to see you again, Ken. He's a fantastic real estate attorney, and he's been doing it a long time here in Myrtle Beach.
Almost 40 years. It's amazing.
And I'm right. I'm not far behind you. So, but he just does an outstanding job, and he's just a great guy. It's great to have him back with us. And of course, Trenton Redmond with Newbie Sartip. Trenton's been with us a number of times and does a fantastic job doing real estate. Tell us a little about your firm, Trenton.
Sure. Well, we do all kinds of things. We handle collections work as well as residential and commercial real estate. We do some personal injury, business formation, business transactions, civil litigation, the whole gambit.
Okay. And again, our show is real estate, but if you have any questions and regarding any of those issues, you can give us a call and Trenton can answer those for you. 843-848-8080. And of course, our third guest is Brittany Jones, my partner, and she primarily handles personal injury as our firm does, but she'll give us a hand answering questions on real estate as she sees fit. And it's good to have you all with us today. And we'll start off just by asking, what are some of the legal issues that South Carolina home buyers, face in our market today?
Probably the same thing buyers face across the country, and that's the indecision over interest rates, sort of the indecision about world affairs. You know, we do it every day, but most of the time I remind my staff, these people that are buying or selling only do it 2 or 3 times in their life. So we have to take extra time to explain and go through some of the details with them. But normally we probably face those same questions as in other parts of the country. There are some things that are specific to South Carolina, but those can be addressed, individually by questions if necessary.
Yeah, now you mentioned and it's something that's affected everyone around the country, but the interest rates, how has that affected our local market, if at all?
Well, a lot of our market is driven by investment properties, and for folks, if they have to get a mortgage to purchase that investment property, then they're very sensitive to the interest rates. A high interest rate can really diminish or even completely negate any profit that they might enjoy from that investment, especially when you consider HOA dues and other expenses. So that's something that we're very sensitive to in this area.
And I would think there's been sort of a balance here. On one hand, we have a lot of people moving into our area, which is great, and we're growing, we're thriving. On the other hand, when you have the higher interest rates, it's more difficult maybe for buyers, especially first-time buyers. Is that right?
I think that's the biggest challenge with the working class people that live in Myrtle Beach. As you stated, the predominant number of people that are moving here, I would say, are from the Northeast, and they have retirement funds and they have monies from the sale of their houses, and a lot of them are not affected like a new family or a new young person getting out of school. There's a lot of debate sometimes whether it's better to rent or to buy. It depends on every situation. Sort of depends where you're going to come out ahead by renting versus buying. So.
I know in the old days when I was younger, everybody said, "Try. You really want to buy." And I think my kids soon enough will be at that age where they'll be in that position where they're going to be, do you rent, do you buy? But I've seen lately that there's a lot of discussion that maybe it is better to actually rent, especially, I guess, with the high interest. Is that because of the interest rates?
Well, when you're a renter, usually all you got to do is pay the rent. But when you're a homeowner, you got to handle rent. You got to handle your principal, your interest, your taxes, your insurance, your maintenance, and the hot water heater blowing, the AC unit going down. So there's a lot to be analyzed when people nowadays want to decide. It really all depends on their net worth and their paycheck at the end of the week as to whether or not they can build in a mortgage payment.
and you don't really think of that stuff until it happens, right? And then you go,
But
oh,
you know,
gosh,
at the
it's
same time,
expensive.
rental market prices are so high. You know, $1,700–1,800 a month for a 2-bedroom unit, and then if the rates do drop, then you can look. Well, hey, I can make an $1,800 a month mortgage payment and build equity, just like in a savings account. Every time I make a payment, I'm saving a little money or making a little money.
I know our area has changed so much. When I first moved here back in the 1800s, you know, a long time ago, and it was the summertime, and I literally couldn't find a place to rent. There was it was literally, the market was filled, and I ended up finding like a roommate that I could move in with. You know, that was over 30 years ago, and I know things have changed, but how have we seen our market locally change over the last few years?
Well, I mean, I'm sure everyone has noticed, you know, a ton of building going on, a ton of
Yeah.
activity. We've had definitely an influx. I think probably, I don't know the exact numbers, but I wouldn't be surprised if over the last 10 years our population has at least doubled in the county.
Yeah.
We're seeing a lot of development, both for sale and for rent. I'm sure people have noticed, you know, a number of developments where instead of, you know, selling off townhouses or single-family residences, the developers retain that and rent it. And so we're starting to see that development move out from the core of the kind of the coastline into, you know, Conway, Aner, Loris. So there's a lot of land left for that to happen.
Which is good.
Yeah.
And you know, we see that in the Northeast where actually cities sort of grow into each other, kind of, where it's just all this, you have all these empty space, and unfortunately a lot of times it's trees and nature that gets hurt the most. But you mentioned Aner, and I know all these areas are thriving and growing, and I suppose that'll continue to happen as people continue to realize what a special place we have here, and people keep moving here, right?
There's no question. I mean, the areas around Loris and Nichols and Aner and all of those other areas are interesting areas for development because they don't carry the price tag that something a half a mile from the beach or 4 blocks from the beach. I mean, obviously the beach and the access to the ocean controls a lot of the price points. But as far as change, it's interesting to see these multinational companies coming in and building these big projects out, 6 and 7 and 8 buildings of 4-story apartments, and I don't know what the occupancy rate is on them, but they're continuing to build them, and I guess it's based on the numbers that they see of people moving here. And you've got the permanent population moving here, but then you have the service industry that has to help serve those permanent population. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of other type of jobs, manufacturing and others, but it's a service industry, and it's hard for these people that live on tips to be able to rent close by, and then obviously to buy a house is almost impossible. So a lot of things have changed, some good, some not so good. You know, I'm worried to a large degree about our continued lack of infrastructure improvement, which has always been us, Horry County, behind the 8 ball as far as monies out of Columbia for road improvements, et cetera. So that's going to be a great challenge. All of us have seen that. You know, 3 years ago, you could go from point A to point B fairly easily, but now with all the 80-some thousand people that have moved here, it's become a lot more congested. Not nearly what it's like in the areas from which they came, but certainly more than what we're used to.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to continue talking to our panel about real estate law. If you have any questions, please give us a call at 843-848-8080. That's 843-848-8080, and we'll see you in 90. Welcome back to Legal Access. I'm Ian McGuire, along with Ken Corbett, Trenton Redmond, and Brittany Jones, and we are talking about real estate law. If you have any questions, give us a call at 843-848-8080. That's 843-848-8080. Before the break, we were talking about what was unique on the coast as far as real estate. What are some unique laws maybe that might be of interest to buyers or sellers in South Carolina that they should be aware of? Is there anything that comes to mind?
Well, I guess the first thing to understand is that a lot of folks who have moved here from elsewhere, they're used to conducting real estate closings through title insurance companies.
Uh-huh.
We have a bit of a different structure here in South Carolina where we are an attorney closing state, which means that if you're going to sell, purchase, or finance real property, you have to have an attorney assist you in the closing of that transaction. And at the same time, your closing attorney serves as the agent for the title insurance company.
Yep.
So they're going to be doing pretty much everything: the title search, reviewing that title search, issuing the documents on behalf of the title insurance company, and then communicating with the other side of the transaction, and then sitting down with you when it's time to go through the settlement statement and the other closing documents. So that's, a couple states do it that way, but most do not. And so that's something that's kind of a surprise for a lot of people.
If you had to say, well, these are the advantages to doing that way, and then maybe if there are disadvantages, what would those be? How would you answer that?
Well, I would say the great advantage of that is that you have a professional attorney there who you're in direct communication with, who can assist you, help you to avoid any kind of legal pitfalls, help you to interpret if you have any questions about HOA documents,
Yep.
master deeds, that sort of thing. And then also, if there needs to be, if you need assistance in drafting the contract in the first place or an addendum to that contract, your attorney can assist you with that. So that's helpful.
And if someone that came from another state and says, why do I need an attorney? What are things that maybe I can't see, maybe I'm biased, but a disadvantage to having an attorney-driven state as far as real estate? But is it arguably easier to do transactions without the attorney, or is it cheaper, or what would be, it seems like, to me, it would seem better for everybody to have an attorney involved to make sure that the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. But
I think the price point is not much different.
Right.
In South Carolina, the title insurance is usually handled by the attorney who's an agent, and they get a percentage of the premium plus the fee. And a title company would get probably that same percentage, but then they would have other type of costs built in, like administrative. And they have to be under the direct supervision of a licensed attorney. Just because the title company says that I'm moving from New York to Myrtle Beach to do titles, they still have to have a lawyer contracted to review the title or certify it. So there's always going to be that cost as well. One quick example, like, I had a situation, we missed something. We're not perfect, but we missed something, we stopped. And there was a mobile home that was inside of a structure that was 5,000 square feet, but you couldn't tell it was a mobile home by looking at it.
Right.
And our title abstractor missed pointing that out. And a year later, my guy's trying to sell the property, and he's coming back to me saying, well, what about the title to the mobile home? And I said, what mobile home? And, a title company said, well, you've got title insurance, thank you very much. But in our case, I didn't stop for 30 days until we got the problem fixed. It had a 30-year lien on it from a bank that no longer existed. Both people on the title were dead. So we had a lot of work to do, but within 30 days we got it cleared up. And that's what you find in the difference between an attorney-driven operation and one that's just a title company.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and Trent, you mentioned, real estate contracts. Are there any red flags that an individual, and again, if you have an attorney, you're in a lot better position, but red flags that you might want to look for in a real estate contract that would give you pause? Either.
Well, when we're talking about on-market transactions, if you have a realtor, typically they're going to help you to prepare your offer, or they'll help you to, they'll send you that offer, and they'll typically get you through the contracting period. However, sometimes the parties will want to tweak the typical provisions in a contract, or if you have any questions about what the meaning of a term or provision in the contract is, then it's definitely a great idea to consult an attorney. Unfortunately, I can't tell you how many times I've had someone, we've received a contract, we're, working on the closing, and then I get a call from the client saying, well, what do you mean that's what it says? I didn't see that, or I just signed it, and it's really real estate transactions, it's not like going down to the, buying a TV or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a pretty big deal for most people. So just make sure you read the contract, and if you don't understand something, have an attorney assist you in reviewing it.
I can't, Brittany, I know you probably remember taking real estate
Yeah.
in law school, and just the amount of forms and paperwork necessary to complete a transaction. And those of you who have bought or sold a house, probably I said, wow, I just feel like my wrist is sore from signing, because you're signing so many documents, and it's like you said, it's not like buying a TV. There's a lot that goes into it, right? As far as making sure.
40 years ago when I started, I would think the package was maybe 6 or 7 documents, even in a loan transaction. And then over this time, because of lawyers and because of lawsuits and because of federal regulations, now packages can be 80 pages long.
Yeah.
I think as real estate attorneys, though, and y'all might agree, the biggest risk that we now face are twofold. One is, as we just mentioned earlier, about missing something in a title. That could be really difficult. But the biggest issue that I believe most real estate attorneys face today is potential for wire fraud. Every week I hear of cases where people have been duped out of their earnest money because they didn't read the instructions from the attorney, or they got an email intercepted that changed the wiring instructions. If anything keeps me up at night, is that threat and risk that the hackers could get into either the client's bank accounts or ours. Even though we have firewalls and
Yes.
insurance and all of that, it's gotten where the hackers are so aggressive now that it's a very risky thing. So we pay very close attention when it comes to receiving and sending wires.
And along the same lines, does it happen very often where both the buyer and seller are represented by the same attorney? Does that come up a lot?
It can. We
Yeah.
the attorneys that do that, before you ever get to that point of acknowledging there's a dual representation letter that outlines exactly what that means if I represent both parties. But like Trenton was saying earlier, most of the time when we get the contract, all the negotiations and so forth have been resolved.
Right.
Everything has been done. And unfortunately, if we are in a dual rep situation and there is a conflict between the buyer and the seller, we automatically withdraw, and then they have to retain other counsel. And it's very, very rare that that happens, but it can happen, and that's why it's important for that dual representation agreement.
Are there any kind of benefits to being represented by the same attorney, or not so much?
I give discounts if I have both sides. I have a standard fee sheet, and if someone says, hey, well, you're doing both sides, can you adjust your fees? I said, why not?
Yeah.
Because it is a lot easier on our office if we're
Okay.
dealing with, one group of people, buyer and a seller, versus other law firms that have different procedures. But it goes both ways. We do it all the time, either with other great firms like his or other really good law firms locally. It's a good mix of interaction, and certainly something that we have to live with daily.
Listen, I want to follow up on that topic. That's a great question. It's interesting, but we are going to take a quick break. When we come back, please give us a call if you have any questions on real estate law. Call us at 843-848-8080. That's 843-848-8080. Welcome back to Legal Access. We're talking about real estate. I'm Ian McGuire, along with Ken Corbett, Trenton Redmond, and Brittany Jones. If you have any questions, we still got a few minutes to take your calls. 843-848-8080, 843-848-8080. Before the break, we were talking about having dual representation versus having a single lawyer for a transaction. What happens if someone is buying a property and the seller has had somebody, inspect the property, and the buyer relies on that, and then there's an issue? Is it pertinent for the buyer to also do an independent investigation on the property and have a report done, or can you rely on the seller's report? How does all that work?
Well, at the very outset of the process, the seller is required to provide what's called a property condition disclosure statement for the property. And that's a questionnaire that asks, do you have any knowledge of any issues that, related to the, physical aspects of the property, like the roof, HVAC, and then some other aspects of it, is it in an HOA, is it subject to covenants, conditions, and restrictions? And so the seller is bound by that. So if they make some sort of false representation, especially if it's something that can't be revealed through a simple inspection of the property.
What about you're buying property and there's asbestos, for instance, and it wasn't disclosed, but it wasn't found, and maybe it was an honest mistake on the part of the seller. How would all that work?
I think if you're buying a property and you have any questions, even after you review the seller disclosure, then you interview what you think might be the best home inspection team. A lot of these, there are a lot of those companies out there. If you're getting ready to have one, make sure you do your due diligence and pick one that's got good reviews and that has a good track record and have done it a lot versus someone that might be new and not know what to look for. I don't do litigation, but I'm always called on occasion about, well, my inspection report didn't disclose this problem that I found. What do I do now? I said, call a litigation attorney.
Yeah, and really you want to avoid that.
You do.
And so the way to avoid that maybe is, instead of just relying on the initial disclosures, maybe it's worth the money if you can do it.
Absolutely.
If you're investing in this property, to go ahead and have somebody independently inspect, right?
Exactly, yes.
Trent, you had mentioned HOA. I know that we have a show on HOA every couple of months, but just generally speaking, I know when I bought my house, we had an HOA. I didn't go and do any research, and then you can get in, and we have good HOA, but there's all these rules and laws, regulations, I should say, that you never even thought about. So what is something that buyers that are buying a property and entering a neighborhood, is there anything that you recommend that they should do before purchasing the property in regards to that?
Yes, they should absolutely review the restrictions that the property is subject to. If it's a condo, that means a master deed and rules and regulations. If it's a townhouse or a single-family residence, that'll typically mean a declaration of covenants, conditions, and restrictions. I see, there's two main cases that I see all the time. Someone buys an investment property and learns that they can't do short-term rentals, or they buy a home and they realize they can't park their work truck there.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
very important to review that and have an attorney assist you in reviewing that.
Okay, excellent. And we're just about out of time, and we'll be back next week, and we're going to be talking about personal injury. But I want to thank Ken Corbett,
Thank you.
Trenton Redmond, and of course Brittany Jones for being with us today. And if you have any questions about real estate, give us a call next time, 843-848-8080, and we're going to see you next week again. Personal injury is the topic, and look forward to it. And remember, we're here at 11:30 every Thursday.
You may wish to consult a lawyer to obtain case-specific legal advice. Information regarding lawyers can be located online or by contacting the South Carolina Bar Lawyer Referral Service, toll-free at 1-800-868-2284. If you are currently represented by an attorney, you should direct all legal questions to your attorney. The nature of any legal issue may depend on a multitude of factors. Therefore, the information provided in this program is purposefully broad and does not constitute legal advice. Please contact and retain an attorney in order to obtain case-specific legal advice.